Then I hear someone on the phone outside. He's like, yep, she is right here, blah, 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 blah. He's like giving the description of the park. And he's like, okay, yep, thank you. And my first reaction is, oh, how cute. He's pretending to call the police on me for not having done anything. Cute. And then suddenly, in the distance, I hear sirens. And I'm like, you have got to be kidding me. Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel for returning subscribers. If you're new here, welcome. I like to talk about topics to help you live an authentic and fulfilling human life and achieve your truest potential. Now, as many of you know, I have lived in Mexico now for the past 3 months, but prior to that, I lived for a year in Montana. And I have determined that small town Montana is not an ideal place for a person like me. I'm going to share why in this video. I think it's really valuable to talk about these kind of things in an open and honest way. I remember, throughout my life, I've done a number of things, put myself in a number of situations where people are like, whoa, someone who looks like you, like, how did that go, right? Because I lived in a small town in the mountains in southern Alberta, and people were like, oh, were you the only brown-skinned person there? Or had they ever seen a black person before? And stuff like that. And I think in the past, I was really attached to like coming out and saying, no, like, I'm fine. Race doesn't exist. Like, I can do whatever I want. It doesn't make a difference, right? I used to be like, do you remember the guy in the wheelchair on Scary Movie parody? And anytime anyone was like trying to help him, he's like, I can do it myself. And he was like obsessed with proving that like it didn't affect him at all. I think I was like that about race for a long time. But recently I've been making some realizations, and I'm surprised that it's not, the realizations I've come to are not what I would have thought I'd come to. I recorded and wrote a brand new audiobook called I Thought I Was White. It is released today. Click the link below to check it out. You can listen to a free preview, or you can grab the whole thing and check it out for yourself. So basically, I want to talk about the things I did notice and the things I didn't notice. Initially, I moved to Montana from Calgary because I got married. I married a man who fit, my little checklist that I had as a little girl. And we went to go live a beautiful life on his family's land. Now, I remember before we first went out there, there were a couple things. I remember telling him, I was like, did you tell them that I'm brown? Because he's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna meet my fiance and we're gonna this and that. I'm like, did you tell them? He's like, no. I'm like, can you tell them so I don't have to bear the brunt of them being like, oh, when they first see me? And then also, I remember him telling me, I should let you know, my uncle never leaves the farm. He listens to Fox News and watches NASCAR. And then he stops for a moment and he goes, actually, I think you guys might get along, which was really funny. I am someone who has been involved in conservative circles for a very long time. Some stereotypical, like the one he just described, some not so stereotypical. But I have 98th percentile disagreeability in my personality that I've had since I was a kid. And I've only kind of recently thought about and realized where this whole thing was coming from. I grew up, in my childhood home, I was rejected by my own mother for 2 things. One was rape. My mother was an East Indian woman, and my father was a West Indian man, so more African in origin, darker skin, thicker hair. And I really felt kind of ostracized by my mother and her side of the family. And my mother also resented me for being a girl. When I started, coming into my attractiveness, she would actively try to keep me down in that way. I remember the night before the first day of grade 7, she sat me down and shaved all of my hair off. So I think I kind of went through life with a chip on my shoulder about my race and my gender. And because I hadn't really examined that inside myself, I liked to put myself in situations that felt familiar, where I would be an outsider because of those factors, and where I had the opportunity to prove myself, right? Oftentimes we do this in life. If we had a father who was cold and rejecting, you might find that you're attracted to men who seem cold and rejecting because you kind of want the opportunity to win them over, like you never got to win over your father, right? So for me, it was this like societal thing. Anyway, I got along great with his family. That was part of the reason why I was totally looking forward to marrying him, going and being out there. I knew that there was nothing left for me in Calgary. I knew that there was nothing left for me in Canada when the graveyards of the Indigenous children were being discovered, and all that happened was, you know, a simple apology, right? That's it. To me, that was so heinous. The fact that they didn't open up, you know, a serial killer investigation for something like that, right? Just, oh, yes, we're very terribly sorry. I became aware that the country was not what I thought it was. I've always been suspicious and uninterested in being governed by the government, right? Based on all my experiences in public school, which I talk about in all my previous videos. This was just blatantly malevolent to me. And combine that with all of the restrictions, the lockdowns, the lies, the fake science, the mandates, I would have stayed. I remember feeling like I should stay and fight for my country, but I was like, this is not my country. And the people were ready to turn on each other. The people were just activated as agents of the government. The second the government dropped one little fear drop here and there, just little sprinkles of fear, and boom, everyone just activated, turned on each other, and forgot, you know, their basic decency, their common sense and reasoning. What was happening back then was a open book test. It's happened in history before, and people still fell for it. So I knew, I'm like, okay, I need to get out. And so I got on a plane to join my husband. That was really interesting, being in an airport during this pandemic. It was completely empty except for a handful of people. The employees were very kind and well rested. I had a wonderful time. I didn't have any problems, but I heard a lot of problems happening. So I'd be in the lounge and waiting, and I'd hear like, so the flight to Hawaii has been canceled. But like prior to that, they were like, we're looking for one employee and we cannot find this person. And then there's like, there's a storm, so now the flight to, you know, Peru or whatever it was, like all the flights were being canceled, switched around. But mine worked out just fine. I love, you know, looking out the window, people watching, striking up conversations with strangers, trying to find the healthiest junk food, going through all the new books in the bookstore. So anyway, I made it to Montana. I ended up spending a decent amount of time in the small town nearby. Now, I am somewhat familiar with small towns, like in Alberta and southern Alberta, where I'd worked when I was in forestry. And I know that going in there, a lot of times they don't see people like me and they don't expect to see people like me. But I also know that a lot of them are conservative. I find that conservatives have a chip on their shoulder about people assuming that they are racist. So they go out of their way to be extra nice to me, which is great. I think anyone should accept any beneficial privilege that they get in life. But I met some really amazing people in that small town. You know, they had people who would just like start to know me by name at like the bookstore, the post office. I remember I had this one experience that made me realize just how much I love small towns. I had requested a fax be sent to the library that I frequented so they could print them there and I could pick them up. And I kind of forgot about them. And the next week I went there and I was checking out some books and I was leaving. And the librarian's like, oh, Adele, you forgot these. And it was like the fax is from like a week ago. So it was like they knew who I was and they thought about it. And it was just really cute. I feel like it was a real reflection of small town Americana. You know how these big trees lining the streets, a lot of American flags, a lot of kind of old cars, you know, people. It had like a safe kind of feel to it. I saw a general mix of people, mostly Native American people and people of European descent. I had pretty much just like one slightly off-color experience that I wrote about in my audiobook that you can check out below that I described in detail. But in general, no, I didn't have any problems. I think that sometimes, you know, especially in the current climate that we live in, it's more like a quiet, hidden thing where people just kind of don't include you or think of you a certain way. But it was not like this in the 80s and 90s when I grew up, okay? People think it's bad today. You know, they think race is when someone offers you the wrong color bandage. But I assure you, it was a lot worse than that in the 80s and 90s. Check out my audiobook if you want details. The clip that you see at the beginning, this happened in Great Falls. I was parked in the early morning by the side of a park in a Sprinter van. And I made sure that when I pulled up there that, you know, I was able to park there. There was no one around. I wasn't obstructing anything. Like, because I had the Sprinter van, you know, it can sometimes make you a target because people assume you're sleeping in there, which sometimes I am. So I just try to cross all my T's, dot all my I's, so that people will just leave me alone. While I'm in there, I'm in the back, I decided to make a cup of tea, and suddenly I just hear like boom, 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 like banging on the side of the van, right? So I'm like, what the hell? Now, there's this weird vibe in Montana that I actually can speak to, is that they don't like outsiders, okay? Like people who want to move there from California, like they're really mad about that now because that happened during the pandemic. People wanted to get out of the city and go somewhere natural. And so having license plates that are not from Montana on the back of the van, people would notice it, right? And I could tell by the way this banging sounded, this person sounded like urgent or angry or something, and I was like, I'm not answering. You know, I don't need to answer that. So then I'm just like, whatever. And then boom, boom, boom. And I'm like, oh, you gotta be kidding me. The second time. So then I'm like, oh my God. So I finish making my tea. I'm still not answering the door. I go and take a sip of my tea and think what I'm going to do next. Then I hear someone on the phone outside. He's like, yep. She is right here, blah, 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 blah. He's like giving the description of the park. And he's like, okay, yep, thank you. And my first reaction is, oh, how cute. He's pretending to call the police on me for not having done anything. Cute. And then suddenly, in the distance, I hear sirens. And I'm like, you have got to be kidding me. Now, I think in most situations, people react differently than I did. But I actually pulled out some makeup and started touching myself up so that I would look cute when I answered the door. So I go, touch myself up real quick, get into the front seat, look, and in the rear view mirror, a fire truck is pulling up right behind me. And I'm like, what? Anyway, I get this cute smile on my face. I open the door, I'm like, hey, what's going on? And he's like, they said there's smoke coming from out of there. And I was like, no. And then I was like, yeah, I saw the smoke coming out. And I'm like, oh, maybe I was making tea, you know? And then, yeah, so basically the guy was like, well, is there anything else going on there? I'm like, oh no, it's fine. Yeah, thank you very much. Everyone have a great day. You know, I'm just being so dismissive and nice, right? And they were just like, okay. And they just completely left me alone. Later, the guy who had banged on there, I was getting the bike out to go for a bike ride, and they were still kind of standing around talking, right? You know, it's the thing in small towns that kind of gets on my nerves. It's like when these little things happen that aren't that big of a deal, and people just want to sit around and talk about it for a really long time. So then he's like, yeah, we thought you were smoking in there. And I'm like, so that's why you called the fire department, right? It's like, I don't know, it's like this small town mentality that I noticed that I really don't fit in with. It's kind of like when people see you have something nice, they kind of want to bring you down or like get on you. And sometimes they can be like that, especially if you're like an outsider who also has something nice, right? They especially don't like that, right? So I was getting a little bit of that vibe, but then, you know, this guy had a big smile. He seems a pretty girl or whatever, right? That's part of why I left the Crow's Nest Pass too. There were a lot of really good vibing people there in Alberta, but like I remember trying to talk to one of my friends. I was like, this is the plan I have, and like this is what I'm gonna do, and you know, here's how I'm gonna pull it off. And they're like, oh, well, I guess you better win the lottery. It was just like such a low vibe answer, do you know what I mean? And I did see some crazy things in Montana. I did see more than once parades of bikers with Confederate and Nazi flags. And the Nazi flag fills my heart with joy because I know where that symbol is actually from, so it doesn't bother me at all. The Confederates, I don't know why these people are carrying a flag from people who lost a war. That doesn't make sense. And it doesn't bother me that people do that kind of thing. I think it kind of bothers me that it seems to be a regular thing in some areas and people just go along with it. Now, there are other areas of Montana where I saw the complete opposite. I accidentally walked into a gay pride parade where I saw young children who were cross-dressed, including like a boy wearing like a dress that was a bit suggestive. So I think we're going to keep seeing these kind of things in society. We're going to keep seeing these extremes coming up to show who they are and to try to assert their territory, right? That's natural to humans. Myself, I kind of just wanted to go somewhere where all of that is still not fully implemented. And so for me, that was Mexico. I also knew that I needed the sunshine. I've been getting activated by light codes. I don't know what is going on. My nails are growing. I'm just like filled with energy, joy, gratitude, like all the time. I was looking for it to show you. I have been just writing pages and pages and pages and pages of work that I've been wanting to do for years. A big part of this is due to my self-hypnosis program that I created that will be coming out soon, but also just recognizing my biology and what I need to succeed and thrive. And with my skin, I figured this out in the desert in Las Vegas, where I used to, drive out in the middle of nowhere so I could have privacy and just take all my clothes off and go out in the desert and spend the day there just getting codes from the sun, which changed my entire mentality. They changed my body, my spirit, my energy. And I knew that I needed to live somewhere where I had access to this year-round. I also find that the racial environment is different in Mexico. It's more obvious that it's about class here, because I know that there are so-called Black Mexicans that get treated poorly, but when people see me, I'm a foreigner, they assume that I'm rich. But I think in general the people here are just nicer, happier people, and I'm not talking about the cliche where like a foreigner goes to like a country where people have less money and they're like, all the poor people were so nice to me. Like, it's not like that. I live in an area that has like some really nice houses. There's like upscale people here with white collar jobs, Mexican people, and they're super nice too. Everyone says hi on the streets, a big smile, all the time. I just can't get over how beautiful my life has been here. And this was definitely the right thing for me. I have no interest in these social issues or the politics. For me, I'm here to live my life, to activate the highest purpose that God put me on this planet for, and to enjoy this mystical experience of being alive, which really is truly just a miracle. So I can't lie, I miss Montana sometimes. I miss the people in the small town that I got to know who were so kind and sweet. Montana is one of the most beautiful places I've ever lived. I think Mexico may be taking the cake on that though. So that's all I've got for you today. What have your experiences been with race in the USA versus Canada versus foreign countries? Let me know in the comments below. Check out my audiobook if you're interested in hearing more about the crazy things I've been through in my life, and I will see you again soon. Bye for now.